It is in vain for you to rise early, come home late, and work so hard for your food. Yes, he provides for those whom he loves, even when they sleep. Yes, sons are a gift from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Sons born during one's youth are like arrows in a warrior's hand. How blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. They will not be put to shame when they confront enemies at the city gate. The Lord does not lay the bricks and mortar of a house. He doesn't put on the roof. He provides the principles by which a family will thrive. If we choose to go against these principles, we build our families in vain. And this has far-reaching consequences. For if our families fail, our cities will fail too. We can labor so hard thinking that we are providing for ourselves, but it is God who provides to those he loves, even in their sleep. One of those things that he provides are sons. Some commentators think that there is an implicit reference here to conception, the creation of sons in the womb after intercourse while you sleep. These sons are a gift. They give him security in his old age. They, and even perhaps their sons, offer him protection when enemies arrive at the city gate. His city is safe. The Lord has been good to him. Simon has a full quiver, or at least a full bath. Okay? For those of you who don't know us and are counting again, yes, there are 5. I find people's response to our 5 children so interesting. They laugh nervously, sort of like you did just now, and say something like, "That's wonderful." But you can see what they're really thinking. Have you not heard of birth control? Do you not own a TV? When do you sleep? How will you feed them? Do you have any idea what university fees are? And I wonder, do you view them as a blessing or a burden? 5 complications, 5 intrusions, 5 expenses, or 5 gifts from God? At least ours were wanted. They are clean, clothed, and fed most of the time. And you are Christians, and you have to refrain from saying what you're really thinking. But in the world outside those doors, our society willfully chooses not to have them, or has them when they don't want them. It sees them begging on the streets, and they become simply the product of our lack of self-control, a social, psychological, and economic burden. Eaters, polluters, competers. And we can legally do away with them. Thankfully, I grew up sheltered. The first time I had to give real and careful thought to the issue of abortion was in the ethics class in seminary. There I realized that the argument is valid and that I am convinced it is sound, but it didn't move me. It didn't move me to action. Partly because I didn't understand the act of abortion, and partly because I didn't understand that innocent human life. And then I had some beautiful babies. Having and raising babies was hard work. Even when I had a loving husband, extended family, and a very supportive community. I had compassion for every one of those women walking into that clinic, but there was no doubt in my mind that they were making the wrong decision. Is there doubt in your mind? My first order of business today is to try to expel that doubt so that you can understand and be convicted that there is no circumstance under which abortion is justified. I need some help. We're going to use the men because it's Mother's Day after all, so we get to rest. Pregnancy, as you might know, is calculated in 40 weeks. Right? Technically, the first 2 weeks is the time before conception, since the 40 weeks are calculated from the previous menstrual cycle of the woman. And so for the first 2 weeks, there can be no pregnancy. So week 3 is really when we have conception and implantation. I'm going to call out a few developmental stages of the baby in the womb. And I want the men that I ask to have a go at guessing at which point in gestation the baby reaches this milestone. You ready? Okay. We'll start here with Christu. Christu, when do you think eye color is decided? Right. Right at conception. Actually, everything about how that baby looks is decided at the moment of conception. Nothing is added, it just grows. Kilian, when does the baby have its own blood cells? Week 6? Week 5. Baby has its own blood cells. Dube, when does the heart start beating? Week 5. Something's got to move those blood cells around. Nico, up there, when do you think brain activity starts? Week 5. 5 is a big week, yes. Who do I see? Nathan, up there in the booth. When does the baby have a complete skeleton? Week 6. When does its fingernails begin to grow? Chris? Week 8. Very good. Jaco Fincham, when is it sensitive to touch and feels pain? Week 9. When does it have fingerprints? Anybody? David, right here. Week 9. When can it pull funny faces? Tabang. Week 10. Pinar, when can it hiccup? Week 10. Jock, the back there. When are all organs except the lungs functioning? Week 12. Right. So now that you are all experts in embryology and the development of a baby in the womb, have a look at this and tell me what you think the age of this little one is. That is a fetoscopy of a baby at 9 weeks gestation. Small probe down the umbilical cord with a tiny light, and the baby is shielding its face from that light. It's light sensitive at that point. Abortion has been legal in South Africa since 1997. I quote from the Abortion Act. A pregnancy may be terminated upon request of a woman during the first 12 weeks of the gestation period of her pregnancy. In the case of a minor, no parental consent is required. A pregnancy may be terminated from the 13th up to and including the 20th week of the gestation period if a medical practitioner, after consultation with a pregnant woman, is of the opinion that the pregnancy would significantly affect the socioeconomic circumstances of the woman. Up to 12 weeks gestation, most abortions are done by giving the pregnant woman medication contraindicated for pregnancy. In other words, the description warns pregnant women not to use this medicine. It causes the baby to suffocate, contractions start, and eventually it's expelled. This method is not effective after 12 weeks. Post 12 weeks, abortions are done by means of manual vacuum aspiration. The baby is pulled apart and removed from the uterus by suction. Perhaps we should not be surprised that we live in one of the most violent nations on earth. If this is the legalized treatment of the most vulnerable persons in our society, this is darkness. One of my heroes is Advocate Keith Mathieu. Together with his wife Roz, he has tirelessly been fighting the legal battle against abortion in this country. He has become despondent about the church at large, for it is silent in the face of this great evil. The real figures are not available, but a conservative estimate is that around 500 legal abortions are performed in South Africa every day. That is 182,500 a year and about 5.3 million since the law was passed. In 2023, we were on faculty at the Wilberforce Academy with Keith, and his talk on abortion arrested one of our Rasha Christi students. Ilandri came back determined to do something about abortion in our town. And it's been my privilege to mentor and work alongside her in what would become Potch for Life. Being a student town, Potch has a particularly high abortion rate. So much so that there has been a national inquiry about the number of referrals from the campus clinic to the public hospital. Ilandri has faithfully followed the call that she felt the Lord place on her heart during that week. This little video, I think, does a good job of explaining what it is that Potch for Life does. see, the issue of abortion is much wider than what happens in the hospital. Upstream, there is the social and moral decay of families, which leads to unwanted and unplanned pregnancies. Downstream, there are mothers in crisis who feel they have no option but to terminate their pregnancies. We need to create those options. So, from the video, you could see that there are many places that you could get involved. If you have a heart for teenagers, the Undiluted program is a wonderful way of helping them, teaching them about good sexual choices. Students for Life, if you are the activist type and you like having tough conversations on campus. Writing the informed consent document, if you are of the medical fraternity and can help us thrash that one out so that it's useful. For the One, the Crisis Pregnancy Center, they're in Estlin Street doing amazing work, always needs volunteers and support. But today I want to make a special appeal for families to get involved. We are in urgent need of place of safety, fostering and adoption homes for babies. Anushka and her team down at For the One, they are doing a great job at the crisis center. Many women choose to keep and raise their own babies, but some cannot. And this is where, as the church, like the believers in first century pagan Rome, we must create alternatives and options. So, the Children's Act of 1995 makes provision for the following stages or actions in child safety. Temporary places of safety provide a safe haven for babies who are given up for adoption, abandoned, or children who are removed from dangerous situations. Placement is not supposed to be for longer than 3 months. Fostering provides care for babies and children while the mother is incapable of doing so, with the goal of reuniting the child with the birth parents, if at all possible. And then adoption, providing a permanent home for a baby or child, a forever family. Although the oversight of this charitable work is now under the purview of the state, it wasn't always so. Ever since its inception, the Christian church was known as a haven for orphans and widows in hostile pagan cultures to which it was witnessing. Listen to this interesting passage from Book 4 of Lactantius' Apologetic, written in the 300s AD, when the church found itself under persecution by Diocletian. He says, "Nor is it less a great work of justice to protect and defend orphans and widows who are destitute and stand in need of assistance. And therefore, that divine law prescribes this to all, since all good judges deem that it belongs to their office to favor them in natural kindness and to strive to benefit them." He's saying this law of caring for widows and orphans, even the pagans think that this is a good thing. They recognize it. It's part of God's natural law. But these works are especially ours, meaning the churches, since we have received the law, the scriptures, and the words of God himself giving us instructions. For they perceive that it is naturally just to protect those who need protection, but they do not perceive why it is so. For God, to whom everlasting mercy belongs, on this account commands that widows and orphans should be defended and cherished, that no one through regard and pity for his pledges should be prevented from undergoing death in behalf of justice and faith, but should encounter it with promptitude and boldness, since he knows that he leaves his beloved ones to the care of God and that they will never want protection. What he is saying is, we have to look after widows and orphans so that people can be martyrs for the faith and know that their loved ones will be looked after. That they can go into martyrdom with a sense of peace because the church will look after the ones to whom they are pledged. It's an incredible mandate. So in a perfect world, there would be no unwanted babies. Our world is not perfect. The optimal scenario, as envisioned by the Children's Act of 1995, is a carefully counseled mother decides to give her baby up for adoption. After a healthy baby is born in hospital, he or she is placed in a temporary place of safety with a loving family as soon as possible. The birth mother has 60 days to reconsider before finally signing off on the adoption. Once this has been done, the baby is adoptable and can be placed with his or her forever family as soon as possible. The Department of Social Development oversees this whole process. Our current places of safety, some in homes like those of Dora and Refilwe in Ikageng, are full to capacity. And as a result, there are currently 4 babies in the Potch Hospital awaiting placement. They have been there for several weeks. We have an average of between 12 to 15 babies a year who need this type of care, just from our public hospital. Ideally, there should be many families waiting, ready to take them in and advocate for them until their forever families are found. Becoming a place of safety is not difficult, but it is a very specific type of commitment. Please come and speak to me after the service if you are willing to sign up for this very important task. Of course, the need for adoptive parents is equally as big. It would be wonderful if these Potch babies could stay right here in town and be raised by loving families, some of them in our church community. These families need support, prayer, physical resources, skills, expertise, and encouragement. Ideally, they should be supported for the long term by their local church community. You can donate financially to Shofar Potch's Prochorus Funds account to support families within our church pursuing options of adoption, fostering, and places of safety. You can also apply for that sort of support if you want to be that family. As far as Potch for Life is concerned, there are 2 initiatives that you can join to help support current and future places of safety. The first is Covered, second-hand baby clothes, toys, blankets, etc. It's a little stall that we've started at the Varsmark on Saturdays. We need you to come and support it. You know, when you have to go to their baby shower and you can only afford, with all the money you can spend on it, 1 Woolies baby grow. You can come with that same amount and buy the whole shebang. Blankets, baby grows, toys for the same amount at Covered. We need stock. Sonia and her team are graciously allowing us to be part of the Drummersmark at the end of May. And we will happily take any baby wares off your hands that's filling up your space. All the proceeds will go to the support of places of safety, fostering, and adoptive families. Second initiative, grocery boxes for place of safety families, and also for pregnant mothers who are malnourished. A box like the one you see in the picture there that supplies moms and babies with food, costs around 800 Rand a month. Prayer. This whole effort needs to be covered in prayer because we are treading on the domain of the evil one. We need prayer for families to be willing to open their homes. We need prayer for mothers making tough decisions. If you want to see some spiritual warfare, be at that pregnancy care center when they come in thinking that they can get the medicine there. We need prayer for the babies who are currently in hospital. Protection against the abandonment that they might experience even at such a young age. We need prayer for the Department of Social Development and its social workers who are completely overwhelmed in the face of this crisis. We need to pray for the awakening of the church. I want to finish off this morning with a short exposition of the famous verse, James 1:27. James writes to the church and says, "Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their adversity and to keep oneself unstained by the world." I read a beautiful exposition of this verse this week, and I want to share it with you. James begins by using words like pure and undefiled. Other translations might use the word faultless, unblemished, or spotless. Whatever the words, James is describing something for us here. So while this is commonly referred to as the command to care for orphans, James 1:27 is in fact not a commanding verse. There's no imperative verb. It is a descriptive verse. It's a verse describing something that is pure and undefiled in its application and its expression. When we think of the word religion, we think of a variety of things. Church steeples, rituals, or being scolded as a kid for taking too many pieces of communion bread. But the word religion here, in its most distilled down form, refers to an outward expression of faith, a demonstration of something that is inwardly true. It is describing a pure and undefiled outward expression or demonstration of something that is inwardly true, namely of God, who God is, and what God does. Martin Luther once said, "The world does not need a definition of religion as much as it needs a demonstration." And that's pretty much the idea here. And the context of the whole book of James is that a poignant call to put our faith in the gospel into action. Perhaps he's suggesting that there is a particular outward expression of the gospel which is one of the cleanest, purest, and most vivid that we could participate in. And not only is it pure in its demonstration, but perhaps it's also cleansing to us in its application. Participating in it somehow cleanses us as well. Again, he's not so much commanding us to do something as much as he is inviting us to be something. The kind of people who have been so deeply and intrinsically affected by the gospel within us that it begins to express itself in some pure and vivid and clean ways through us. Many translations use the words look after here. It's important that we address this because sometimes when we look after something or someone, we're able to still maintain a sense of distance between us. The writer says, like when I was a kid and my mom would ask me to look after my little brother and sister. I would maintain an awareness of their presence, but certainly didn't want to get involved in what they were doing. So look after isn't the best connotation here. The essence of the language is best translated to give intense attention to go and see. The tense of this word calls for this to be habitual practice and attitude, not just isolated acts of do-goodism and charity. It's less about what we do periodically and more about who we are consistently. It conveys far more than just stopping by and saying hello, but instead implies a sense of consistent closeness and nearness and personal contact. Remember, this is a descriptive verse. James is describing something for us, and in doing so, he's not being prescriptive, but descriptive. Orphans and widows, the fatherless and the husbandless, easily represent two of the most marginalized and pushed aside classes of people in James's culture. They carried no legacy and contributed nothing to society. So society pushed them away. James is using them as representatives of the most marginalized, disenfranchised, and vulnerable groups of people we can come into contact with. I don't believe he is being prescriptive here, as if it's orphans and widows only. I believe he's being descriptive. So if we were to say, but James, what about victims of trafficking, the homeless, the under-resourced in our city, the parents in crisis, on the brink of losing their children, or my struggling neighbor across the street? He would not say, no, it's orphans and widows only. Instead, I believe he would say, yes, that's where we go. Those are our people. In essence, he's suggesting that we become the kind of people who move towards and give intense attention to and visit those in our world who have been outcast, marginalized, and pushed aside the most. And when we do, when we step towards the hard and the broken and not away, it puts the heart of God demonstrated in the gospel on display with a vividness and a clarity and a purity and a cleanliness unlike anything else. Your friends or family or co-workers might look at you and wonder why you are so boldly going against the status quo of avoiding and isolating yourself from the hard and the broken. Instead, you choose to say, I see you where you are, and I'm coming after you. They'll wonder why, and you'll have a great answer to the question. Ultimately, because of what Jesus has done for me. And then there's the final section on keeping oneself unstained. We tend to neglect this portion of the passage in our foster care, adoption, and caring for families discussion. Probably because we're not entirely sure what the connection is and how it ties in. I think it's clear now. Our participation in this work, and even more than that, our becoming these kinds of people in the gospel, is cleansing. It puts a clean, unadulterated picture of the gospel on display. But it cleanses us as well. Who has time or energy to be stained by and consumed with the affairs of this world when you are so immersed in and stained by the brokenness of others? It changes your perspectives, your worldviews, your hopes and your dreams, your prayers and your families. It changes everything for the better. And we are somehow cleaner for it. Would you today consider becoming part of this expression, this pure, undefiled, clean expression of the gospel in our town? That's me. And so now we're going to have the privilege to hear from some beautiful, clean people in our congregation who've been walking this road as they give testimony of the ways in which pure and undefiled religion has sanctified and blessed them. Yaku and Erika.
Yeah, so Jaco and Erika, you have adopted 2 children, beautiful Bella, Isabella, and Daniel. So if I can ask you, why did you adopt?
Well, we decided a couple of years ago to adopt. The reason for that was we were medically it wasn't possible for us, but obviously we tried and we prayed about it. I mean, look at Erika's jeans. She was on her knees the whole time. It was just, no, we obviously, we prayed about it, and we believed, we really, really believed that God will make a way for us. And so after, we even tried in vitro. So we did everything humanly can, we did it. So, and once, after a couple of years, nothing happened, and we have to ask ourselves, what's happening here? And we have to ask God a couple of questions, what's happening here? So, and then it came up for us to adopt. That's the last option. And it was actually the best option, and the option we should have taken first, because the moment we decided that, from my heart, it was just a burden that lifted up, and I had total peace. So I think, yeah, that was the reason we adopted, and we realized that this is God's plan for us, to have adopted children, and I think the sooner you see it and you accept it with all your heart, it just makes it so much more grateful for us. Yeah.
Thanks, Jaco. Erika, can you maybe expand for us on what did adopting Bella and Daniel do to your marriage?
Yes, I think in times like that, in times like not getting pregnant and going through the whole in vitro process, obviously there's a lot of stress and anxiety in that whole process. But I think for us, we were always there leaning on each other. When Jaco was negative, I was positive, and vice versa. And the Lord really worked in that way, just for us to rely totally on the support of each other. And obviously that would have not been possible if God wasn't in the midst of everything. So I think at the end of the day, our marriage was just growing through this, and
Thanks, Erika. And why would you guys, and would you, and why, if the answer is yes, would you tell people to adopt? If you know what you know now, would you tell other people to adopt? If the answer is yes or no, why?
No, I think definitely yes. For us, it is such a special process, and obviously it looks a lot different than being pregnant. But with Bella, we were 8 months baby pregnant. So yes, but a yes is always. The process is so special, and standing here and sharing with everybody that everything we went through, always when somebody approached me and say, can you share your story, I just say yes, please. And it's just for me it was just a very special process to walk, and journey.
Yeah, I just want to add on that. Looking back at it, we really feel what God did. It mirrors kind of the adoption mirrors kind of the relationship that God wants with you. If I can say from my perspective and from our perspective, it's a deeper. It deepens your relationship, obviously, with your wife, but more with God, because if you don't understand bonding, you will understand bonding after you adopt it. And that is the type of bonding that God wants with you as well.
And then my last question is just, because you adopted your children, they must be God sent. So they are always good behaved. They are incredible. They go to bed at night early. They wake up only in the morning. So maybe if you can just tell us about how well behaved your children are, and why that is the reason. Maybe some family stories through that.
No, they don't run around in church. Huh? No.
Yeah, no, I think it's the same. If you have children biologically or through adoption, as you can see, it's with Daniel, we had quite a shock because Bella was this friendly little girl and she was rustig, and then we got Daniel was like a tornado going 100 miles an hour. So, but luckily we have an amazing support system in church and our friends, and yeah, we will be forever grateful for them just standing in the gap when we feel like exhausted. And yeah, so yeah, when you adopt your children is not yeah. If Engel.
Angels.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jaco and Erika. Can we give them a hand? We have a few incredible families in our church, some who just couldn't make it this morning. So I also invited my wife just to share some of our story about Almu and Benjamin. So this is Benjamin, 18 months old. He got a fresh haircut yesterday. So his head is quite cold, and so that's why he's wearing this cool missy this morning. He's an absolute joy and a blessing to us. So, Hosi, if you can maybe share with the congregation, why did we adopt?
Sure. So initially it was a dream I had, and this dream kept on bothering me. You know, when you have that feeling, and it just tugs on your heart. It tugs on your heart. Well behaved, but a normal 18-month-old. So I had this tug on my heart and this dream, and it didn't let me go. And I told Krista about the dream, and it basically boiled down to us opening our hearts and our home to abandoned and orphaned children. And I was like, yo, Horsey, I know some people have the deep desire to be pregnant, but I have this deep desire to adopt children. And I am completely convinced that that is the way that God wants us to build our family. So I asked him, do you want to pray about it? Are you in? And yeah, it took us a while to actually be obedient in doing it. That was a process, but when we went over to action, it was so realistic. We got so excited, just planning and just having the dreams of what our family could be. And then, Tanny Heidi phoned us, and Omu was available, and we said yes. And it's been such an incredible journey. It's not easy, definitely not easy, but it's worth all the effort. Like Nal just said, that extra or specific attention. I think if you have your biological children also, they all deserve that special attention, because we are aiming to raise godly children to go out into the world. But it's such a privilege.
I think then also just in our marriage, we were married for, I have to think, almost 4 years with us, and we've been married. So we've been about married for 7-8 years when this whole process started. And so we got Almu only when we were married about 8 years. So getting children later on in marriage is a challenge. I advise people to get children earlier on. And then also with that, I think the big thing for us in marriage was when we got children. It's basically like having any other child. But the big challenge with adopting a child is getting a child that has already attached to some or other parent, caregiver, mom. Some children twice, 3 times, 4, 5 times, which lead to ultimate human abandonment. And the problem of attachment, the attachment is not preserved. So if you start studying these things, The biggest thing you can do for your child is a proper attachment. It's the attachment that happens at birth, when they usually bring the child in and lay the child on the mom's chest. And the child is usually there for hours on end. And usually in the first week, that's where attachment happens for a biological child. And then as they grow into a relationship. This is now then an attachment that you need to facilitate through this process. After Amu was 15 months old when she came to us, she could already say her name. She could tell us Papa, Mama, because they showed her photos. So our names were Papa, Mama. She didn't call us Papa and Mama because we're mom and dad. She called us because that's what our names are. And she had to grow into the fact of creating attachment to us so that we can become her parents. And for us in our marriage, it was an incredible hard and difficult things. For Alma, I think the first 3 to 4 months, like people getting their babies, usually for us, having a 15-month-old child who didn't sleep. She didn't sleep for 3-4 months. And by month 3 that you literally don't sleep at all, like 2 hours a night maybe, here and there. Eventually you start asking the questions, how do you go through these things? How do you still love one another? Did God really call us for this? And the questions that come. And the incredible thing, like Jaco and Erika said, was the community. Was for us to have the conversations with Jaco and Erika, have conversations with other families who's adopted as well in the Shofar family. Over 60% of all the Shofar pastors now have adopted. So we could reach out to a bunch of other pastors and, hey, how did you go through this? What was the story? How do we love well in a season that's really difficult when it's not your biological child? Because as many of you might think, is the child rocks up and the question might be, hey, do I immediately love the child? No, you don't. You love the idea of the child. You love the child for it's a child. But you love them like you love your friends' children or your brothers or your sister's children. You love them in that sense. But you don't have that parental love immediately towards that. And that attachment still needs to develop over time. So for us, that might have been the biggest challenges initially. And in our marriage, we were so grateful that God was our firm foundation. Our marriage was at a healthy place. And all of this really just drew us closer to one another. So I'll see if you can maybe in the last part just share with us if we would advise other people to adopt, why, and maybe why not.
I'll always advise to adopt. Yes, definitely. It's a tough road, but I think raising children in general is tough if you want to do it in God's way. Yesterday we did Amu's hair, and usually I didn't do it, but we took it to a salon. And when people see us move, the first reaction will be, yo, those children are so lucky. They are so lucky to have you. What a great thing you're doing. And the world has it so wrong, because those children were also knit together in their mother's wombs. They were perfectly made, formed, just like Nell explained, week by week, in their mother's wombs, intended to be born. They were born, and we had the privilege to say, I want to choose you. And we could make that choice. So it's so great to tell Amu, Mama en Papa het jou gekies. Ons het jou eerste gekies. We chose you first. We are so thankful to have the opportunity to choose you. So that would be the response, yes. Pray about it, but I promise you, in any way, if it's foster care, place of safety, adoption, you will not move out of God's blessing, because that is His word. He will provide. He will give you wisdom. Stay close to Him. Stay on your knees praying. He will provide the way, and He'll provide the physical needs that you need as well through the community. But always, yes, if you have this tug on your heart and you're afraid, we were also afraid. Our families weren't too keen on the idea. They were first keen, and then we said, hey, we're staying in South Africa, we're going to adopt beautiful, beautiful brown babies. And they're like, no, that won't work. And then those babies arrived, and Grandma and Grandpa are the first ones to be ridiculously in love with those children. It was just shown to them that these are normal children. Doesn't matter their ethnicity. So yes, I would definitely advise you to consider it. If you have that tug on your heart, don't be afraid. Pray into it, and the support system is there.
Amen. Amen. I want to land this conversation and topic this morning by sharing that it's not optional to get involved. And I hope we hear this morning. It's not optional. It is pure and undefiled religion. If you want to be unstained by the world, unstained by what's going outside there, maybe unstained by the fact that you spend finances on things that you're not supposed to, spending your schedule on things you're not supposed to, living a life that you're not supposed to, you want to remain undefiled, get involved. And for us, there's many ways to get involved. As Nell ended it off with, first, we need to get involved in prayer. Okay? There is a great need in our town for people to be discipled. Okay? If you're not actively discipling people, we're disobedient. Okay? We should actively be discipling people. That means you should be busy mentoring in some way, shape, or form someone, and you should be mentored by someone in some shape or form. Okay? So first of all, that's really important. And that means you can make yourself maybe available to people that rock up at the clinic, at town, in town, at the hospital, etc., where you can make yourselves available to a young mother, a young father who's going to have a baby. They are unsure and they need good practical discipleship. Okay? We need to actively pray. You need to write this down and make it part of your prayer life. Hopefully you do have a prayer life. So part of your prayer life is to pray for this town, is to pray for the brokenness. Okay? You can literally just drive literally now to McDonald's by the mall, and you will find 2 children standing on the street there, right there. Somebody needs to go and sit down with those children and have conversations and talk with them. Okay? We need to pray that we need to do practical things in our town, and then we need to pray about how we're going to get involved. And maybe you need to get involved by adopting a family that you're going to start praying for, that you're going to financially contribute to, that you're emotionally going to start support. Okay? So then we're going to have families that need to put up their hands and say, hey, I want to be a place of safety. Okay? There's 4 children in the hospital, okay, at this very moment. Most probably within the next month, there's another 4 that's going to be born. Okay? It's not like we're going to sort it out and next month it's gone. So we need to actively have families that say, hey, I'll be a place of safety. Now we registered, is it 27 places of safety since the beginning of the year, if I have that number right? Okay, well, we had applications for people who said they wanted to be a place of safety. So what that means is you go through a process to open up your home, to take in that baby for 3 months in your house. You take care of that child, and what they do in that period is they prepare moms and fathers that can actively either then take that child into foster care. Foster care is a 2-year placement. That's usually when the parent just has some troubles they need to sort out, or a bunch of other things while they be taken away. But ultimately it comes to adoption. So we need people who are places of safety and say, hey, I'm going to take in a child for 3 months. We can sign up for that. Then we need people for foster care. And I want you to somewhere, if that's something on your heart, Ilana, who's there at the back, they have been fostering for many years now. I can't remember how long, 3 years. Fostering is a very, very type of specific person. That is taking in a child, and that child still has a parent, so you have to preserve attachment towards the biological parents. And you are looking after that child until the mom and dad most probably figures out life and corrects their lifestyle so that the child can be placed back to the parents. That's a very specific calling. If that is your need and God is putting that in your heart, please speak to Ilana. I just pointed out a little tip of the iceberg of that whole conversation, but please speak to the Jordans, to Gilia and Ilana about fostering. And then ultimately in adoption, the story that we shared, that Jaco and Erika shared this morning, that we need ultimately to be a final resting place for children to become your children. So let me tell you this. Amu, her name is Amugalang Eli Low. She was born and her surname was not Low. She was born with a different ID number. She was literally placed with us, and then when everything went through, her name was changed, her unabridged birth certificate changed, and she got a complete new ID number. And her ID number is now connected to my ID number and Anri's ID number. We are officially her parents. Nothing that can take her away from us. We can't give her back. There's no place that you can be, it can't be undone. It's final. It's as final as the day you were saved and your name was written in the book of life by God. And that is the gospel. That is the good news. That is the place that we should be getting involved with in this nation. Documented over 3 million orphans in our nation. 3 million. 4 of them now available to be looked after in Potch Hospital right now. Family, I hope this is a call to action that really does something in our heart. So I want to do this. If you're sitting here this morning and you want to get involved in prayer, in finances, in place of safety, in foster care, in adoption, if that is you, would you stand right there where you are? I just want to pray with us. If that is you and you feel a call this morning to get involved, just stand right there where you are so that we can pray.